to qualify, and we're going to lose some very strong players in this group as well. One that doesn't look likely is the young man on your screen right now, Praggnanandhaa. However, can't count them in just yet, even though they're leading the event. A draw and a loss, for example, would just not be enough. So it's still a very, very important round right now to at least put some points on the board.
Definitely. Praggnanandhaa, he knows he's playing a tough guy after this game no matter what. So even though he is Vaki against Andrew Tang, I do expect these players to both play pretty ambitiously here. They had the hindsight watching yesterday's rounds, and anybody can beat anybody. Try your chance with white. And Tang's got to be feeling good. That extra half point he pulled off against Vincent Keimer, against Anish Giri in that crazy time scramble, that is looking huge right now, pushing Anish back and keeping him, near the top of the leaderboard. And now his game against Keimer looked pretty clean to me. So he should be feeling himself and probably playing for the point here.
Absolutely. I think we have Grandmaster Rachmanov there as well, going to be playing, I believe, against Sindarov. And we're probably moments away from the game beginning here. And yep, that looks leaning forward. Definitely the game just getting underway. developing the bishop and castling, and it's just the nature of this opening. There's a heavy focus on the queenside development and securing that central d4 pawn, because the entire game is revolving around, can black in a good way play pawn from e6 to e5. This move right here is the main break of the opening, and you have to be ready for the move d5. If white pushes the pawn forward instead of capturing here, it looks like the pawn on c7 can just be taken on the next move. But black has a number of ways, first of all, to sacrifice that pawn and just offer it up. But there's going to be huge, huge counterplay coming after, with maybe a move like e4, e3 to hit the knight, and also the b2 pawn.
Yep. With the inclusion of these moves, this game doesn't necessarily fizzle out. And I'm not sure who's more familiar with this opening, but I know Pragg as a Nimzo player has got to know this line and know kind of how to equalize. There's a potential for some interesting play to arise. First of all, if you take on c7, you might be wondering what happens if white takes on c7. Yeah, then black pushes that e5 pawn to e4, maybe can push it to e3 and disrupt white's development. If white plays their pawn to e4 to stop that before taking on c7, maybe Pragg goes bishop g4 or c6, and there's still a little bit of play there. So the player is not ready to go into an endgame just yet. And the way the time, like one thing, Andrew Tang is very good in time scrambles and he's very fast, but he is susceptible to time trouble. Like he takes time, like we saw him behind on the clock against Keimer when we tuned in, and against Geary. So even though he's got mouse skills and the bullet skills, he also does take his time and can get into time trouble, just like anyone else. And right now, being down a couple minutes on the clock as white isn't ideal, but got a lot of things to consider as to how ambitious he wants to be in the position, how much space he wants to grab. But yeah, I'm noticing that 2-minute time differential, and that might influence decisions in this game.
Yeah, I've come to a pretty solid conclusion that if Andrew Tang was a worse player in time scrambles, he would have better time management. But because he's so good with low time on the clock, I don't think he feels the pressure of low time the way that it would probably be good if he did, in order to remind him, oh, hang on, you got to play a little bit faster than this. That's not enough time, because he's so talented at the end of the game, finding those quick pre-moves, making it happen, that he's developed a comfort level with low time. So it just doesn't really phase him the way that it might another player. So, some good to that, but also some bad, because he generally plays the game slower as a result, because he's confident, okay, it doesn't matter if I have 10 seconds, 5 seconds, I can still do a lot with a little.
Mm-hmm. After e4 here, is Pragg considering the move pawn to c6? Is he considering bishop g4 followed by maybe knight d7, and you're kind of baiting the c7 pawn for maybe compensation? He goes for c6, and yeah, that's standard.
Yeah, I like c6. I think there's a, for example, if the pawn was captured on c6, the knight recaptures and black then plays bishop g4, bishop takes knight, then there's a world where black just brings the knight into d4 and has a much better position playing with a strong knight against white's light square bishop. I do expect we may see an idea like bishop to c4 to defend the d pawn, but the issue with bishop c4 is then after black develops bishop g4 to attack the knight, suddenly you need to react, because maybe you would have played bishop e2 previously, and I think that if you get doubled pawns on f3, that looks like something that Pragg would be pretty happy to see.
He would be pretty happy to see it, but for some reason I could see Tang castling here and allowing the double f pawns, because if you don't allow that, I'm not sure you play bishop e2. Mm-hmm. Can you play rook d3? Yes, that's not normally the way to deal with that. I mean, it works. It's just investing a bit of time. Whereas if you castle, it does ask black, are you actually going to go into that endgame? Because white does have a pass pawn, And that bishop on c4 can probably make an argument that it's better than the knight on b8 in quite a few positions, especially if it opens up the diagonal from c4 to f7. So I'm talking about castles, bishop f3, queen f3, queen f3, gf3, that endgame. If Tang finds himself in a kind of a small push, he's going to be happy with that. A little bit of play, but no risk. And when you double your pawns around your king, but everything's traded off, it's not as bad in terms of like king weakness. There won't be pieces to really hammer those double F pawns. So it can be more acceptable to allow that if you benefit on other parts of the board. And yeah, the argument would be that the knight on b8 doesn't develop very easily if black trades that bishop, because then after, then the knight, if it goes to d7, there might be some tactics after d5 captures c6. So
yeah, I like that relationship between the bishop and the knight that you mentioned, because the knight on b8 almost needs to stay on b8 until white plays pawn takes pawn. But white's not going to do that until the knight moves. And if the knight never moves, you're kind of playing down a rook. So the pressure is more on black in that situation, because if you ever take the pawn in the center, white can take back with the bishop, and black will really have nothing better than knight c6, and white could capture it with a favorable pawn structure. So I agree. I think the bishop on c4 compared to the knight on b8 could be actually in white's favor, even though optically, the way the pawns are arranged, you might favor the knight. But he's taking a really long time to figure this out. This is sort of what we were talking about, Eric. He gets lower on time because he's comfortable being lower.
Comfortable being low on time, but I don't think anybody in no increment just feels comfortable, like knowing, your draft flag no matter what. Even if you're a really fast player, you want to be in an endgame or right now there's so many pieces at the end of the game. So yes, it's so block here and not look at see the move for black to actually, keep things interesting. You can play knight d7. I'm really looking at d takes c6 there and trying to find, black would have to recapture the queen, otherwise have a bad pawn structure. Taking here, you can play bishop takes d5 Amon, and after knight c6, you can probably take on c6 and maybe play rook d3 and just have a risk-free position. I don't know after knight c6, bishop takes c6 if there's a rook c8 move, but Tang is strongly planning on, considering and probably planning on taking on c6. It just depends if rook c8 is playable, but rook ac8 isn't playable because you can pick up the rook on e8, and that's probably too much material. And rook ec8 feels like maybe your rooks are too close together. But here, this position, white is just slightly better and risk-free. Whether you want to go rook d3, whether you want to go, it's I don't see winning chances for black, and I'm not sure black is going to try for that. It might be safer to try to go into a rook endgame that should be a draw, because it can be deceptive playing against Andrew when he's low on time. He absolutely can turn up the speed and play for a win with less time on the clock than the average human. You know, it might take 20 seconds to win a position. For him, that would take the average player here maybe 30 seconds. So,
A5 kind of restricts things on the queen side. White may have wanted to play B4, which would have stopped A5, C5. Really needs some clarification on the king side with this bishop. Like, you'd love to be able to not deal with bishop takes F3 every single move. And black can't, easily play bishop E6, bishop D7. These moves all drop material one way or another. So I don't know. Do you take?
Well, if you don't take him on and things continue the way they are, Tang's going to start playing for a win.
Yep.
Time is evening up. The position is getting easier to play for white because of the loose pawns on the queen side for black. So Prague, the risk of keeping the bishop is there's some endgames where eventually you won't take the knight. White will get a pawn from F2 to F3, and that bishop on H5 is stuck on a part of the board that isn't participating. So if you do not take that knight on F3, and that knight eventually reroutes to D2, and you push your pawn to F3, bring your knight to C4, white will have a knight on the queen side harassing all those black pawns. Meanwhile, black's light squared bishop is going to be stuck on H5 or G6, not actually targeting anything worthwhile. And that's where I see white with a position that's good, that's more comfortable, that you can play for a win. And Prague allowing this. Okay, bishop E2. He doesn't want his bishop to be stuck on that side of the board. That is a huge move him on because those positions looked awful. Like, I would take that any day of the week, and Tang would have fantastic winning chances. Bishop E2, might want to bring the bishop to B5 or something.
Yep.
That's probably a very professional find by Prague. If he doesn't find it, yeah, he's in big trouble.
And the knight improves to the C5 square, but it's a little bit different now. The bishop is supremely placed on B5. It's covering every weakness. The B pawn, at some point, probably should move for white, but for the moment it's a little bit restricted. And D5 is not something that white can challenge. Rook D3 is impossible. Rook D1 is impossible. Black can actually just play rook A to D8. Absolutely. Pretty smart because he's not going to repeat 3 times, but even trading seconds when you're up 20, 30 seconds is a huge boost. So this might actually be very clever chess. I just don't know if he's fully trying to repeat. Yeah, H4 finally played. Yeah, now the position's different. You can't just repeat, and they're going to keep doing it, which, as you said, take time off black's clock and take time off white's. That favors whoever's ahead. Okay, rook d2 played. The invasion is happening, but
Queen d4, there's rook takes f7 check.
wow.
And right now, rook takes f7 check is a threat.
Yep. Yep.
With knight e6, queen a5 played quickly by Prague, up 15 seconds. Tang is in trouble unless he can stabilize.
You almost think about knight e6 now, just as a move to bring your queen over to the king.
What happens after bishop e2? Okay. Okay. Very tense. Kiramon, can I get my queen to f4?
Yeah.
Queen d8 runs into rook d3.
Ooh,
he grabs a pawn.
This looks like the wrong side to be playing on. White, it just moves away from getting that queen over to the other side. Rook a3. Ooh. Lots of checkmate threats. Rook a1 and rook h1 is coming. Rook a1.
Rook a1. Rook
it's
a1.
Still there. Huge threats. What do you even do?
That's mate him on g3 or g4. You just bring the rooks behind.
Time is ticking, but it doesn't matter. It's not about the time. It's about the board. Prague wins on the board against Andrew Tang, moves to 5.5. Eric, that all but guarantees that he will be one of the top 4 finishers.